What is up, guys, and welcome back to another Gran Turismo sport video. It's been a little while, 3 or 4 days. I've got to say I've actually missed playing the game, which is a good sign. So here we are once again for some more daily races. Actually, first, we've got a FIA race, which I did quite a while ago, maybe like a week ago, but I didn't think it was video worthy because, well, I had a pretty lonely race. Maybe that'll give away the surprise of what happens in said race. But yeah, this is the FIA Manufacturers Cup. We're in the Audi TT. We're at Bathurst today, but we're also following up this race with some daily races, which happen to follow, this afterwards. So Bathurst seems to be hot property in the sim racing world right now. The Bathurst 12 hour was last week. And so that's probably the main reason as to why a lot of these other sims are, going here. We've got the iRacing Bathurst 12 hour happening this weekend, which I unfortunately will not be taking part in. But I do have some plans to do other enduro events going forward. It's just, I kind of ran out of time really to get anything organized, which is a shame, but I'll make sure that we don't have that same issue going forward. But anyway, here we are for FIA Manufacturer Series. Like I said, we're in the Audi TT, the front-wheel drive monster, which basically gives me understeer galore. Power understeer, but also tyre wear galore on the front tyres. This is our qualifying lap, and we're on the soft compound tyre, and this is like literally, we've had one, out lap, and this is our flying lap. And you can already see the tyre wear in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen is already starting to have a pretty sizable impact on our tyres, which is absolutely mad. But anyway, we open up the taps on the back straight, the Conrod straight, shall I call it, into the chase. We absolutely fly through here. This is just the turbo speed for the Audi TT. It is absolutely OP when you can just open up into hyperdrive on the back straight. It is really nice. We come across the line, and we get pole position for this FIA race. It was a 5-minute session, and I had enough time to do another lap, but the second lap that I did was 7/10 away. So part of that was tyre wear, but I also didn't get a better lap in on the second lap. But the first one was good enough to get us on pole by 6/10 to the nearest car. So we should have a pretty good time of things in this one. Wish me luck. Right then, P1 on the grid for the Bathurst 1000, or should this be the Bathurst 12 hour? The jury is still out on that one, but we are ready to rumble here in my backyard. The planes overhead, like, literally drowned out the sound of the engine. That was really off-putting for a few seconds. They're still really loud, even though you can't hear it because I'm talking over the top of all of the game audio. But regardless, just trust me, it was super loud. Sound barrier was well and truly broken on the first lap. But anyway, we cleared out a bit of a lead on the first lap. We made up a lot of time over the top of the mountain. Like, that's where my experience comes from at this place. That's where it's going to come through relative to some international drivers who maybe don't drive Bathurst as much as I have in my lifetime. But yeah, we got out a good lead. We broke the DRS. It's been a while since I've said that. We broke out of the slipstream range. But then the tyre wear kicked in. You can see we're actually on the mediums for the start of this race, so I thought I'd run long, and I didn't want to get caught up in traffic, so I just thought I'd break out of a bit of a lead if I could, stop late, not get held up behind anyone, and go from there. But even the mediums are suffering halfway through this race. We're now going to box for the soft compound tyres, which have to go the rest of the race, but I'm pretty confident they'll be fine. No fuel needed to get to the end either, so it's just going to be a straight up tyre change, and that is a fast one from the boys there. That was, yes, it was fast forwarded, but you could be forgiven for thinking that maybe my pit stop was done in fast forward, because the gap coming into the pit lane was like 1.3 seconds. We came out of the pit lane and we have a lead over Prinzillens, the Austrian, by over 4 seconds. So I don't know how, but in the pit stop we gained 3 seconds. Maybe the Austrian put some fuel in. I don't know why, but that's kind of the only explanation I have. But anyway, we're on the soft compound tyre. We have a bit of a lead to the net P2 driver, and we're just clearing through some traffic which hasn't made their stops yet in this race. So they should be pretty easy pickings for us. We thankfully catch these guys at really opportunistic times, because we catch them on the straight. They let me go straight through. I get the slipstream, and if anything, I pull away even further from the cars behind. The Austrian got overtaken by a Spaniard, and the gap is now over 7 seconds to net P2. So it was a pretty calm rest of the race. We bop in a couple of fastest laps, a 12.4 and then a 12.0 to match my qualifying time, mind you. So that was pretty tasty. But that was the race, a pretty straightforward one. And this was actually my first race that I did in A class, and we only went in and won it. I was a little bit skeptical about whether I'd win races in A class, especially being an FIA rated series. I was very, very surprised to win, not only to get the win, but to get the win by the margin that we had as well. So very, very happy with that. I think going forward into the next manufacturer series, we might need to look at a different car, because although we are competitive and we are fast against other A-rated drivers, I feel like the TT is a car that's probably going to hold us back up against really good drivers, because even though I had really good pace, I was really dying off at the back end of my stints with tyre wear, so that is something I really need to consider going forward. But with that said, that is FIA out of the way. We move on to a few days later, where Gran Turismo has returned to this circuit for the daily combination. This is daily race C, 9-lap race, no tyre wear that requires a pit stop, and the fuel is also pretty good as well. So it is basically a sprint race over 9 laps, but you do have to maybe look after your tyres a little bit to be strong towards the end of the race. For this first one, we are racing in the Toyota Supra, which from what I've heard is pretty decent in a straight line, but it is a little bit hard to drive. Like, the things that I suffered with were, I think, maybe instability under brakes a little bit, but also just applying the power. It was really, really tail happy on acceleration, and that was something that I had to manage, at least over the first a few laps of this race. But then towards the back end of the race, the tyre wear started to kick in, and so I was still trying to catch the back end and what have you. But I jumped into this race with no practice, no qualifying, so we're starting from the back, as you can see, and we're having to fight our way through all the noobs here in this daily race. But that's part of the fun, isn't it? We get to showcase some of our racecraft, I guess, as we look to go up the inside of the Mercedes. Couldn't quite get that done. He runs out wide through the final corner, and that promotes us up into P14 as we move on to the next lap. We overtake a GTR, which has got a penalty, and now the Mercedes is coming back at us on the mountain straight. I dipped a wheel into the grass as well, which wasn't great for my approach into turn 2. We get a bit of a push from the Mercedes, and now the GTR is coming out of nowhere. A 1 second time penalty. It's all kicking off here in Bathurst through to the cutting.
Ambrose has had a massive shunt. Ambrose has had a massive shunt. So Greg Murphy's involved. More cars. The track is jammed. The track is jammed.
Can you believe that? That was huge. And look at this. The track completely blocked. Nah. 2005 Bathurst Day. I'm still very salty about that crash between Murph and Ambrose, but no, what am I talking about? That was me. That was a red flag. We just totally caused that on GT. And we didn't get a penalty for that, despite completely mugging off the GTR into a barrier. I'm very sorry for that, by the way. Perhaps I'll have some karma heading my way later on in the race. I don't know. I feel like in GT Sport, The plebs always get their comeuppance sooner or later. And who knows, the fellow GTR up here might be able to dish it back out to me. It's P8. We've got 4 laps left in this race, and as we get to this midway stage of this race, the car is starting to behave in a way that I don't exactly like. Like the Toyota Supra is already a car that doesn't behave all too well on fresh tyres, but once you add in the 7 times tyre wear rates, it's not pretty. But thankfully we get let through by the GTR. Maybe, well, okay, I was expecting to get punted by that guy, but we get the opposite treatment. P7, 2 laps left to go in this race. We've now caught up to an Aston Martin and another Mercedes. We're staring down the barrel of a top 5 here if we can get through these last couple of cars. You always find that you've got so much time to make up in a rolling start. We spend the whole race just trying to get into a respectable position as we go around the outside of the Aston Martin. That is us up in a P6. Hopefully he doesn't dive bomb us back into the final corner. And he doesn't. Thank goodness for that. So now we can set our sights on the Mercedes as we head on to, I think it's the penultimate lap of the race. We'll have the slipstream from him. Thankfully, we have a pretty speedy car in a straight line. We weren't able to use that to our advantage on the mountain straight. We get absolutely lunged from the Aston Martin into the cutting. And penalty. So that probably is the karma from earlier on. That section of the track coming back to bite me there. So, yeah, it was a weird one. The Aston Martin lunges us. He then bounces off my car into a barrier, then I get the penalty for that, and yeah, the rest is history. It's P5 now as the Mercedes made an absolute mockery of the descent down the mountain. I tried to be very cheeky there, swerve into the path of everyone to hopefully give me the momentum to hold on to the position. I had a race recently which well, it was a long time ago, actually. I ran into the back of someone who unghosted, basically, and I was horrified from that. Speaking of horrific incidents, here's one that's waiting to happen as we go around the final corner, up against the Aston Martin. Are we going to get the overtake done? Yes, we are. He's actually spun out of the final corner. So we need to get a replay up on this to clear my innocence, because I don't think I hit him. I'm pretty sure he just spun on his own. He got caught up on the curb. Oh, that's unlucky. So that is going to be P8, or maybe even worse for him as he crosses the line. I think he got P8 and he swiftly rage quits. So, P19 to P6, we have a drop in safety rating there, but that doesn't really matter because you can gain all of your safety rating back by having one clean race. It seems like safety rating is a bit messed up on this game. Like, you can get penalties and hit people off and still gain in SR, which is interesting. I feel like it was probably stricter earlier on in the game's life cycle. But we're having a change of heart here. We are switching to the Porsche 911, and hopefully this thing will be better in the long run. I know that this car is really good for its handling, not so great on straight line speed, which might make life difficult for us in terms of actually getting the raw overtakes done. But I know that we're going to be an absolute demon towards the back end of this race, because tyre wear will come into it, obviously, with it being 7 times the normal rate. But you might have noticed the drivers in this lobby are pretty sketchy. Half the lobby is filled with D-rated drivers. Don't ask me how, but it's happening. You can see the Subaru blows up. We get caught up behind a fellow Porsche there, and it's P17 for us. So, yeah, look at the screenshot from the start of the race. Like, literally half the drivers are D, the other half are either B, one B driver, and then the rest A. I don't understand what's gone on there, and so it's meant because I'm starting in the back, I have to get through all of these idiots in order to get to the fast boys. So we literally have a yawning chasm of a skill gap between the top half of the field and then the rest. And it's my job to just get through the rest. And then, well, in one piece, you can see we're just carving our way through these guys. Starting to pick up some of their habits, possibly. We get past him. Thank you very much, P13. I knew that if I could just keep it clean, if I could just like survive, not get taken out, I knew I could get through the first half of the field very quickly. But that's half of the issue, just not getting tangled up in their crashes. It's so easy to get involved in it at a circuit like Bathurst, where, especially at the top of the mountain, where there's no real margin for error. The track is very narrow, there's a lot of blind corners, very easy to get caught out. And the skill gap as well, even if someone does keep it on the circuit like this Mazda is doing, they're very, very slow, and even then they can be a bit of an obstacle. It can create an obstacle course within an obstacle course itself, that being the top of the mountain. But we are hopefully going to get rewarded for our patience here in not punting off the Mazda, who is braking very, very early at every opportunity. We're going to go around the outside here at Conrad. He gives me the big squeeze as well, which I really appreciate. And now for the second half of the act, where I get punted. No, okay. That usually happens when you get blocked and blocked and blocked. The guy who is all of a sudden driving slowly before might start to test the limits with the braking zones and use your car as a brake. That's always a fun one. But halfway through the race now, and we are finally starting to make some inroads on the rest of the A drivers. So we finally got through slower boys, and now this is where the fun begins, as we chase down a GTR running down the hill. Might give the GTR a go at some point. It seems to be pretty fast in the overall leaderboards. A very fast car in a straight line, and at Bathurst, to be honest, you do need a car that has good speed for this third sector. So we might give it a go. How it is on tyre wear, I'm not too sure. But that's all part of the fun, isn't it? Just experimenting with all the different cars on Gran Turismo. I've only got a very limited knowledge on a couple of cars. I need to literally give everything a go just to see what suits me the best. But we go up the inside of the GTR into the chase, and we just about get that done. We slide out the back end as I went in a little bit too deep there. I had to literally use all of the back straight to get the slipstream, to get the run on the GTR, because that thing is pretty handy in a straight line, and the Porsche is not so great. But last up of the race, we kept overtaking people, and then there was a big margin to the next car ahead. It was, I swear, like 6 seconds every time. P4 spins out at the final corner, which could make things interesting on the run up to the line. You can see P5 and then myself and P6 are closing in on the run up to the line. It looks like it might be a drag race, and the Mazda loses P4 right at the death there in this daily race here at Bathurst. For us, unfortunately, it is again position 6, where we ended up in the first one. So perhaps we are the new Super GT confirmed. After a couple of races at Bathurst, I thought I'd try something different. I went to daily race B, I think it is, and I think this is, I don't know how you pronounce it. Is it Sardinia? Anyway, we went here in the Group 4 cars, and this was a big mistake. Being an A-rated driver, going to a circuit which I've never driven before, I was well and truly out of my depth here. Just getting absolutely monstered by everyone in the field. The only way I could move forward in this race was when people had penalties, or when people would crash, and so it was a very frustrating affair. So going forward, I need to make sure that I know the circuit before just rushing into things, at least in this end of the spectrum. But after that nightmare out of the way, we are going back to Bathurst, and just as I promised, we are doing it in the GTR, and we're actually qualifying this time. I did a decent time with a 2:04.1, so we'll see where that puts me on the grid. I think it's a decent time, not amazing, but we'll see where it puts us in this final race of the video. It's P14, so not much of an improvement, it must be said. I did only do a couple of laps, to be fair, so going forward, we need to put a lot more effort into it than that. But away we go for the final race of the video. Bathurst 1000, Bathurst 12 hour, the greatest Bathurst spectacle you will ever see in the history of motorsport is going to befold you in this race. We're in the GTR, sponsored by Skittles. So if Skittles are watching, you want to send me some free stuff, feel free to do so. We fight side by side down the mountain, which is something that I would not recommend. Up against the McLaren, we get him. Then we barge our fellow GTR out of the way. Lots of contact being made down the mountain. This is just a bit of a nightmare. But these races were so fun. This is a circuit which takes no prisoners. One mistake and, well, if you've got damage, you're usually out of the race. But yeah, it really is just a race of survival, and coming through the fields in a race like this is very good fun. But it's P11 already. We've made up quite a few spots despite the sluggish starts. But then I go and throw it away by rushing the run out of the chase, and we drop a spot to the GTR. But then there's a couple more incidents up ahead which basically undoes the whoa. Well, okay, there's just too much to just happen there for me to even comment on. It's a 4-second time penalty for God knows what. We need to have a replay just to go everything that happened at the end of the first lap. So we have the GTR in red, giving us a bit of a squeeze up the straight. That's fine. But then here, this is where I made the mistake. We get rear-ended by the GTR. He goes through, 2 people up ahead spinning. We get them. And then here, this is just a big cluster. We get turned in on by another GTR. And then the red GTR, like, went flying into a barrier, reset to track, and then carried on and actually gained time out of all this. So I'm sorry if there's just too much to comment on, but keep an eye on the red GTR as we head into this final corner. We get turned in on, red GTR out of nowhere, gets in front of me. No idea how he pulled that off. And then, after all that wizardry, he makes himself disappear. AKA rage quits. And I'm not too sure why, because he was in front of me, he doesn't have a penalty like I do, I've got a penalty, and decided to keep going with this race. Arguably, don't know why I did, because now I'm in P15, and I've got it all to do, again, in this race. 8 laps to go, and, yeah, get ready, buckle up for more of the same, because we've got a lot of cars to fight our way past. Thankfully, there is a car right up ahead that's got a penalty. A Mercedes doesn't know how to take Forest Elbow, and that's unlucky for some. P13, there's a bit of squeezing going up ahead, but it is going to be 3 wide here as we both negotiate this Beetle. 3 wide right there, and then the Mercedes is still trying to squeeze us off. I don't know what this guy is playing at, but he is going to get a nice little love tap into the chase. See you later, pal. Karma is a bitch. Replay time, because I need we need to have a look at that again. So the Volkswagen Beetle was very slow. We gobble up him. 3 wide down here, and then the Mercedes makes a very quick beeline for me on the left-hand side of the circuit. I mean, I know you need to be to the left, but you don't need to be that far to the left to take the kink. And then here, I'm not going to lie, I just punted him, because you can't be treating people like that. It's P10, it's P9, do I hear P8? No, okay, we'll settle for P9. And hopefully that can be the last of the incidents that we have in this race. So I'd like to engage in some clean racing for once. But this is Bathurst, and clean racing is not a given. Right, bit of clear air. A couple of personal bests for me. 204.9, 204.3. We're actually going purple on this 5th lap here. But now we are starting to encounter a bit of traffic, so you can basically say goodbye to that fastest lap attempt. But we do have a GTR and a McLaren F1 to negotiate. Bad exit for me there. But we will have the slipstream of the McLaren to get us through into another position. There's a lot of GTRs in this race, and it seems like all the GTRs are absolute knobheads when it comes to racecraft. Myself included. Side by side into the chase, and this is always a bit of a hair-raising moment fighting through here. The McLaren holds on just about. We're trying to get a nicer exit as we head into the final corner. I'm going to go to the right-hand side as a dummy. Then I'm going to switch to the inside and overtake up the inside. No, doesn't work out. The McLaren holds on. That is really good defense from him, to be fair. And now we're under pressure from the South African behind. Thankfully, we keep him at bay. I really wanted to make a point of not letting him through because he has a penalty, and so too does the car in front. Like, even if he overtakes me, it's a futile exercise because I would have got him back anyway. So, yeah, we keep fighting. 204.3 and then a 204.9, which is not great. Hopefully we can go for a fast lap at some point. Maybe this will be the time because we got a little bit of clear air. But also a bit of slipstream. We're coming up to faster drivers, so hopefully this can be our best chance to get a fastest lap. And I actually think this is my fastest lap of the race. So let's just stay on board for the rest of the race and we can get a good idea of what it takes to be somewhat fast at this circuit. Like, I know all the lines and I know when the braking points are, and I feel like I'm very good over the top of the mountain, especially coming down. This was an area of the track where I was gaining time, hand over fist, over most of the people I came up against in these lobbies. But still, up against the elites in Gran Turismo, there still seems to be something missing. I don't know if it's a braking technique, which I'm not, mastering, or whether I just need to get on the power earlier, or whether my gear selection is a little bit wrong. But the biggest thing I think might be missing is, again, the steering. When I was fast the other day at Laguna Seca in the Mazda, the Honda S2000, I was using less steering input. Scrubbing the front end a lot less. And maybe that's something I haven't applied over to the GT3 cars. And something I'll need to endeavor to try and do to continue to be smooth and gradual with all of my inputs, not just the pedals, which I feel like I've got locked down at this point, but maybe the steering could be a bit more refined. So we'll see how that goes, and I'll update you on if I make any progress with my speed, I guess. But we're now up into P5. We get past the Supra with relative ease. It's 3 wide for those guys up ahead, which could be very tasty. We could be on for a P2 here to close out this video here at Bathurst. That'd be the dream. But yeah, we flew past that Supra, which is decent in a straight line. That just showcases how good the GTR is, and I guess to a degree why everyone is choosing it, because the only place you can overtake at Bathurst realistically is not at the top of the mountain. So third sector and then the start of sector 1. That's where all the overtaking is done. So you need that straight line prowess. Basically, you're just holding on in the corners, going up and down the mountain, and then let the car do all the talking when it comes to overtake time. So we'll see if we can set ourselves up nicely for the end of the race here. We've got a nice exit out of Forest Elbow on the power nice and early. We are slipstreaming a GTR, which isn't ideal. But we do have a Porsche up ahead, and then there's something in front of that, maybe a Corvette, I'm pretty sure. So we'll see if we can get involved. We know that at least the GTR in front of us will get involved. So perhaps we'll all converge on each other as we head into the final corner. Again, another nice run out of the chase. Second phase exit wasn't great, and now we have a run at the GTR into the final corner. This is for a spot on the podium here as we go up the inside. No, it's not a spot on the podium. It's P4. Learn to math, Ben. But across the line, it's our best results of the day, with arguably probably the craziest race we had yet. We had a couple of big boy penalties. We had some big battles. And at the end of the day, it is a pretty handy result. Fastest lap along the way to that P4 as well. So I will certainly take that. But there we are. That is my adventures on Gran Turismo Sport for today. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you did, make sure you leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to see plenty more racing game videos. I'm still very much aware that I need to clean up my driving and just be a little bit more patient, obviously. So yeah, it's Tiametmarduk on Gran Turismo Sport is still well and truly a work in progress. But that's why I'm having so much fun. I'm still learning so much every time I log into this game. And I look forward to getting to the point where we can maybe race some of the really quick people. but that is not a given. Until the next one, it's goodbye.